Pleasant day to each and everyone. So I am Raineza D. Malik, and for today I will be discussing about the chapter 15, in which it talks about the business presentations in actions. So sound bites and quotables. So the learning objectives will be: number one, discuss elements that makes a sound bite effective. Number two, choose a sound bite or quote from a written or verbal message. Number three, prepare a quote that is memorable. So sometimes the words with the most impact are succinct, memorable statements. So when we say sound bites, it refers to the brief statements that zero in on the point of a larger or longer message. So they are often excised from interviews and articles, and they are presented apart from the context in which they were originally written or spoken. So when we say slogans, those are phrases that express the goals, the aims, or nature of a service, a person, a company, or even a product. So, the quotes, those are memorable sayings extracted from written or verbal messages. So, when we say quotes, it usually extracted from a verbal messages or from a written or verbal messages. So, there are common elements of effective sound bites. So, if if you are writing a document, or if you are preparing a presentation, you will want to consider how others will summarize your main point, or how they will summarize your main point on your um, document. So if we can provide a clear soundbite or a quote, then it is more likely to get picked up and repeated, reinforcing our message. So by preparing your soundbites, you help control the interpretation of your message. So, in order to uh, prepare your sound bites, here are four characteristics of an effective sound bite. So, first is the clear and concise. So, your document or your code must be clear and concise. So, your audience must not be confused about your written or verbal message. Second is use vivid dynamic language. So, it is not literally that you will use a hard word. So you just use vivid or a dynamic language or an easy word. And third one is easy to repeat. So yun bang pag mababasa ng mga readers mo, mauulit nila, mababasa nilang mababasa nila ulit nang hindi sila nahihirapan. And lastly is it should be memorable. So your goal when writing a soundbite or quote is to make sure that your idea represents all four characteristics. So in soundbite, we won't always be creating the message, because in some cases we may be asked to summarize someone else's written or verbal messages, like interview or with a quote or a soundbite. Now for the 15.2 topic is about telephone VoIP communication. So the learning objectives will be: number one, at the end of this discussion, the students must demonstrate the 5 stages in a telephone conversation. They must understand delivery strategies to increase comprehension and reduce misunderstanding. So when talking on the phone, or when producing an audio recording, lacks an interpersonal context with the accompanying nonverbal messages. So unless you will use vivid language or clear descriptions, so your audience will be left to sort it out for themselves, where they may create mental images that doesn't reflect your intention, that lead to miscommunication. So The conversations follow predictable patterns. They have main parts or stages that we can clearly identify. Many also will follow a variation of a standard pattern. These are composed by David Taylor and Alice Terhune. First is the opening, second is the feed forward, third is the business, fourth is the feedback, and lastly, fifth, the closing. So table 15.1 shows the example of how a conversation might go according to these five stages, such as this opening, feed forward, business, feedback, and lastly is the closing. So the title of the table 15.1 is the five-stage telephone conversation. So for example, in the opening stage, both parties identify themselves. So they will introduce themselves. They will greet in reciprocated. For example, um, when Ken say hello, hello Ken, really, and Val responded, "Hi Ken, this is Val Martin from any company or department." So Val asked Ken, "How are Ken? How is Ken? Like, how are you?" Then Ken replied, "Fine, and you?" Then Val replied, "Fine, I'm doing great." So the second one is second stage is the feed forward, in which the purpose and tone of conversation are established. So here, the purpose and the tone of the conversation are being established, and a permission also is given to continue whether or not. For example, Val said, "I hate to bother you, but I wonder if you have 5 minutes to give me some advice." And then Ken replied, "Sure, Val, what's happening?" Or Ken can also refuse or give the permission to Val that, "I'm tied up right now, can I call you back in an hour?" So the third stage is the business. The purpose of the business is to substance the conversation. It is where the parties exchange roles. For example, Val said, "Here's the situation," in which Val explains the situation. And then, "I know you are good at resolving this kind of issues, so I was wondering what you think I should do." And Ken also responds and says, "Wow, I can understand how this has you concerned, considering what you've told me. So here's what I think I would do." And then Ken explains uh, the thing that he advises to Val. And the fourth stage is the signal that business is concluded. So here, the example would be Val said, "That makes sense. I'll certainly keep your ideas in mind. Thank you so much, Ken." In which Ken also responded, "Hey, you're welcome. Let me know how it turns out." And then for the closing stage, the purpose of this is to both parties say goodbye. So this is how the conversation ends. So as we can see in the example, Val said, "Have a good weekend, Ken." And then it was responded by Ken, "You too, Val, bye." And then they hung up. Now, cell phones, they are part of many people's lives in the industrialized world and in developing nations as well. So computer users can also utilize voice interaction and exchange through voice over internet protocol or VoIP programs like Skype, Facebook. With the availability of these, both audio and visual images are available to the conversation participants. But here in the discussion, we will focus primarily on the voice exchanges. So here are some examples of a telephone conversation in business, which requires skill and preparation. Now, since you lack the nonverbal context, you also need to make sure that your voice accurately communicates your message. Your choice of words and how you say them, including the spacing or the posing, the pace, the rhythm, the articulation, the pronunciation, they are all relevant factors in effective delivery. So here are five main points to consider. You should speak slowly and articulate your words clearly because um, the listener will not easily understand the words you are talking if you will going to speak fast. So speak slowly and articulate your words clearly so it should be understandable. Number two is use vivid terms to create interest and communicate descriptions. Number three is be specific. So you should not be very broad. It should be specific. So if you have uh, one topic, then you should focus on that topic. Number four, show consideration for others by keeping your phone conversations private. So your phone conversations must be private because it shows consideration for others. And lastly is silence cell phones, pagers, and other devices when you are in a meeting or sharing a meal with a colleague. Because it sounds like a disrespect if you will not going to silence your cell phone if you are in a meeting or if you are sharing a meal with your friends. So you don't have to slow down your normal pattern of speech by a large degree, but each word needs time and space to be understood, or the listener may hear words that run together, losing meaning and creating opportunities for misunderstanding. When we say feedback, feedback is the response from the receiver to the sender. So, feedback is also essential. It is an essential element of phone conversation because it takes turns in the conversation and it can be sometimes be awkward, especially if there is an echo or a background noise on the line. So, with time and practice, each speaker's own natural, comfortable, expressive repertoire will surface. So for the 15.3 subtopics in which talks about the meeting. So at the end of the discussion, the students must discuss meetings and their roles in business communication. Uh, they must describe the main part of an agenda and discuss several strategies for effective meeting. So this figure 15.2, these are meetings or a group communication in action around a defined agenda at a set time for an established duration. So when we say meeting, it is a group communication. It is a group communication in action around a defined agenda at a set time for an established duration. So it can be effective, it can also be ineffective, or it can complete waste of time. So if time is money and effectiveness and efficiency are your goals, then if you arrange a meeting, lead a meeting, or participate in one, you want it to be worth your time. So not all meetings are effective. Sometimes it is ineffective. It is also a complete waste of time. So it can occur also face to face, but increasingly business and industry are turning to teleconferencing and video conferencing options as the technology improves. It the cost to participate is reduced and the cost of travel including time is considered. So regardless how you came together as a team group, you will need to define your purpose in advance with an agenda. So the main part of an agenda for a standard meeting are listed in table 15.2, which is the meeting agenda elements. First is a title header. So in title header, there must be title, time, date, location, phone number, email, contact, or any other information necessary to get all participants together. Second is the participants. So those are expected participants or those are who are going to attend your meeting. Third is the subject line. So, what is the purpose statement of the agenda? What is the purpose of the meeting? Fourth one is the call to order. Who will call the meeting to order? Fifth one is introduction. So, if everyone is new, this is optional. So, if your audience um, knows you already, then it is optional to have an introduction. If even one person is new, everyone should briefly introduce themselves with their name and respective roles. So number six is roll call. So this may quietly take place where introductions are made. And lastly is the reading of the minutes. So notes, these are notes from the last meetings that are read with an opportunity to correct. So these are often sent out before the meeting, so participants have the opportunity to review them and note any needed corrections. And with the old business, it lists any unresolved issues from last time or issues that were tabled or left until this meeting. New business, this is a list of items for discussion and action. In busy reports, this is optional and applies if there are subcommittees or groups working on specific individual action items that require reports to the group or committee. Good of the order, this is a time where people offer any news that relates to the topic of the meeting that was otherwise not shared or discuss. And lastly is adjournment. This is the note time, date, place, meeting adjourned, and indicate when the meeting is scheduled. So there are strategies for effective meetings. So if you want an efficient and an effective meeting, but recognize that group communication by definition can be chaotic and unpredictable, consider the following strategies. Like send out the last meeting's minutes 1 week before the next meeting. Send up the agenda for the current meeting at least 1 week in advance. Send send out reminders for the meeting the day before and the day of the meeting. Schedule the meeting in Outlook or similar program so everyone receives a reminder. Start and end your meetings on time. Make sure that participants know the rule and requirements prior to the meeting. Make sure all participants know one another before discussion starts. Formal communication styles and reference to the agenda can help reinforce the time frame and task. Follow Robert's rules of order when applicable or at least be familiar with them. Make sure also notes taken at the meeting are legible and can be converted to minutes for distribution later. Keep the discussion on track, and if you are the chair or leader of a meeting, don't hesitate to restate a point, to interject and redirect the attention back to the next agenda point. So if you are the chair, draw a clear distinction between on-topic discussions and those that are more personal, individual, or off-topic. Communicate your respect and appreciation for everyone's time and effort. And last is clearly communicate the time, date, and location or means of contact for the next meeting. So that would be all for my report. Thank you for listening and God bless.